This podcast is brought to you by EnergyX. Are you tired of paying huge rates to the big cloud providers? Are you worried about being booted off a cloud platform if your company doesn't meet their ever-shifting standards? Ready to step up your data security and disaster recovery game? Well, ladies and gentlemen, your new cloud is ready. Introducing xCloud, the scalable, resilient computing cloud that is also actually affordable. It's high-performance compute for half the cost. HPC for HTC. xCloud from Red Team is opening a beta program for new cloud computing customers, and that means you, my friend. The xCloud is powered by the XMDC immersion-cooled modular data center from EnergyX. I've seen this data center in operation, and it is a total game changer. So if you want more information about the beta launch, go to the URL in the description. Type in promo code BETA, B-E-T-A, for 50% off of your first instance. And so the URL is going to be digitalwildcatters.com/EnergyX. What is up, Wildcatters? Welcome back to another episode of the Oil and Gas Service Podcast. It is Friday. I'm going to see Sam Hunt tonight, and I'm excited. But before we get there, I'm here with my buddy Tommy Ogden with Activera Consulting here from Houston, Texas. What's up, man?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
Doing good, man. I'm so glad to have you here. We've had a good chat leading up to this point, and so it's good to have you here, ready to tell your story. Obviously, you guys are in the consulting space. What do you guys do?
That's right. So we are IT advisory consultants for oil and gas. And when you talk about a company, in fact, when we first started the company, the first thing we did was vision, mission, core values, really try to understand those. So I think it's a good spot to start, right? So we just launched in April of this year, and we do have a longer pedigree, like a 20-year pedigree. And I'll get into that when we talk about the background. But essentially what our vision is to make a measurable impact on client success. How do we do that? Well, we want to positively affect people, processes, and assets that are changing as a result of digital transformation or energy transition. We use custom-built, tailored, fit-for-purpose solutions to do that. And that's really how we get to that mission of measurable success. And then our core values, which really sort of underpin everything that we do, those are non-changeable. I try to remember them through Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach. That's how I remember those. So BACH. B stands for balance. We like a work-life balance. We all have responsibilities outside of our clients. Our clients have responsibilities, kids, family, whatever it might be. And so we want a nice work-life balance, which typically doesn't coincide with consulting, at least stereotypically. So that's balance. A would be adaptability. Right? So we like to be agile and responsive to external market factors. We are agile. We do a lot of agile transformation or project and program management. And so being able to respond to change is really important to us. The C is collaborative, collegial, right? We like working together. Yep. We're never going to come in there and be the big strategy guys that say, thou shalt do it this way. This is the perfect way. We like to co-create with our clients. It's another C word, right? We like to understand the culture, right? So that's the C. And then the last one, H, is honor. And the way that we internalize that is through integrity, right? We're going to do what we say we're going to do, right? We're easy to work with, and that's non-negotiable. So those are really the high points, I would say, of our vision, our mission, and our core values. So hopefully give you a better sense of who we are as a company. Right?
Absolutely. So who are the kinds of ideal clients for you guys?
Yeah. So we are in the energy space, right? So we'll do integrated oil companies, majors, smaller players, but we typically focus on the office of the CIO or the office of the CTO. So it's information officer, technology officer, data and analytics officer. Right. Typically, that's the place where we play at that C level, and then director and below, and helping move their initiatives along.
It's absolutely needed. When I'm not here recording podcasts and making video content and hosting ETNs, I actually do other things, and a lot of that is actually interfacing with those offices. And what you find is that a lot of these groups are really resource constrained, right? Despite being a multi-billion-dollar company, they just the organization is not allocated necessarily enough people to possibly tackle maybe some of the initiatives.
Absolutely.
And so having groups that you can lean on who have, the experience and the pedigree that you talked about, I think is really important. So let's talk about your background.
Sure.
How do we get here?
Yeah. How did we get here? Well, when I was born, no, I won't start there. Let's see where to start. So I kind of have an unconventional, no pun intended, unconventional background as it relates to getting into consulting. So in undergraduate, I wasn't a mechanical engineer or petrochemical engineer, geophysicist. I was a language major. So Spanish, I took Portuguese, French. That was my background.
So did you just study all the languages?
Pretty much. Well, Romance languages in general, but I didn't know what I wanted to do, right?
Why did you choose that?
I've
never once met somebody who was like, I was a language major.
I was a Spanish major, yes.
Help me understand the psychology of this. Was it just like a young kid didn't understand like what you wanted to do in life? You're like, I like languages. I'm just going to go and...
I mean, you got to follow your passions in life, right? I think one of the advantages of going to like a liberal arts college is that you get exposure to lots of different
Where'd you go?
components. I went to Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee. Okay. So I did languages, I played rugby, I was in the theater. I mean, I just a little bit of everything.
So you're doing a lot of creative stuff, but then the rugby was a little bit.
I know, right? How many theater people are in rugby?
Yeah.
And how many rugby guys go to? So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew there were certain things I liked, and I was passionate about, and that I was good at, and so you tend to gravitate towards those types of things. But what are you going to do with a Spanish degree, right? Mm-hmm. I get out. I'm not sure what I want to do. So I get a Series 65, become an investment advisor representative selling mutual funds. I actually went to Rice Continuing Education to become a certified financial planner, CFP. Yeah. And I quit after a semester because I realized this isn't really my passion. But it's interesting looking back because the whole part I like about consulting is helping people, right? Trying to understand their problems, tackling them in an innovative way. And I can see that in retrospect with like a financial planner, right? You're trying to take an assessment of somebody's finances and then recommend a good path forward for them and their investments, right? And so I can see backwards that why that was attractive to me. It just, the financial aspect never really took hold. So I ended up actually at a heating and air conditioning manufacturer for 3 years in their finance department. And because I had a language background, I kept getting leapfrogged by other folks who had finance backgrounds for promotions and things. Like my bosses loved me, I was doing good work, whatever, but it just wasn't advancing the way I wanted to. So I ended up going back to business school, and I went to University of Houston and I did a dual degree program. So University of Houston MBA, and then they had a deal with another company in Phoenix called the Thunderbird School of Global Management. It's an international business school. And so I did a year and a half full-time MBA, went back to school in 2010. For that first year I was full-time, I got an internship at Hewlett-Packard during that summer, and then they invited me on full-time. So that last semester I was in Houston, I was working full-time for HP and then going to school at night. And then I moved to Phoenix and I did a year over there. And I continued to work for HP at that time, but I was really focused on, hey, what do I want to do next? Why am I here? And interestingly, there was a deliverable or a course where the final deliverable was trying to go out and interviewing somebody in the industry that you want to be, right? Someone who has the job that you want in 10 years and really focus on that. And I found somebody who was working for Boston Consulting Group at the time. And after having that discussion, I realized this is it for me, right? I found that passion in business school. And from then on, everything I did, I got a consulting certificate. I was doing classes where, companies would come into the school and pay money to get, talented MBA students to work on problems. So I was doing actual consulting work there as much as I could eat it up, like just a sponge, to try to get as much consulting experience as possible. And that's really how I found that passion. But how do I get to Activera? Well, I landed a job when I graduated in Houston. I'm from Houston originally, and so is my wife. And we wanted to come back here. And Anaxis Consulting was hiring, and that was a boutique management consulting firm, IT advisory in oil and gas. Sounds very similar to Activera, I'd imagine. And so I got a job. I was, I think, employee 30, 35. And I started working for a super major client at that time and continued to do so for the next 6 years. 2013 to 2018 is when we got the email from the owners that, hey, we've been acquired by Accenture.
Mm.
And so it was a bit of a surprise. I know they were sort of looking for acquisitions. We made it to about 100 people, and I'd say 20 million in revenue. And at that point, you start becoming attractive, right, to larger tier 2 firms. And Accenture, in particular, is, they acquire a lot of companies and integrate them into their company. So we were acquired, and then the last 4 years I've been with Accenture. But sort of realized, and this is a bit of a personal choice, I would say, for a consultant, right? Do you like those bigger tier 2 firms, right? Do you like the tier 1s, the McKinseys and the BCGs and the Bains? Do you like a boutique firm, right? Or do you like to go off and be an independent consultant and try to find your own work? So I did a little bit of soul searching last year and realized, I really, though I'm having a good time at Accenture, a lot of smart people, a lot of good work, that boutique style really matches better with my personality and how I like to
Why is that?
to work. I don't really like the political nature of hierarchy.
Okay.
I like a flat hierarchy. We were just out here in the lobby, right? And you guys got bean bags out here. People are lounging, but they're working hard, right? That kind of atmosphere, it's hard to create something like that in a public company that's so structured. When going back to the C in Bach, right? That collaborative, collegial sort of approach, really, I don't know, it meets my needs as it relates to that work-life balance. And so I just felt like I could get that more at a boutique firm. And looking back on my Anaxis days, right, that really stuck with me. And so April of this year, we took a bunch of folks that were old Anaxis that we had actually, worked together for years and set up this company, and we're doing it again. This 2.0 version. So like I was saying in the intro, though we are brand new as of April, this is really a continuation of that 20-year-old company. And we do a lot of similar things, just a bit more focused in some of the newer trends in energy. Like I said, digital transformation, energy transition.
I think it's cool that you were able to do that soul searching and have that self-awareness to know what is a fit for you and like what energizes you. Obviously you had the experience there at Accenture. I'm the same way. I had a friend pose a question to me the other day. He said, what if he is also at not a consulting group, but a big company.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, what if they gave you this position and you're making $1 million a year? Would you take it, or would you continue to do something else on your own?
Sure.
Even if you're making significantly less. And I was like, dude, I'm not built for that. You can sit there and you can kind of fall in line and make really, really good money. But I know that for me, I look back to some of the lowest points in my life,
right,
where I left my first startup, had a falling out with my business partner, and didn't really know what I was going to do next. I was kind of working on my next startup, had no money, wanted to continue to stay in this space. And so what did I do in the meantime? I started a pressure washing business. Okay. And I'm like literally out there doing like, blue collar work out in the sun here in Houston. And I look back so fondly on that. I know like I'm probably romanticizing it a little bit, but like I would enjoy doing that. And just being the master of my own destiny, because I know like through and through, entrepreneurship for me is like oxygen. Like I don't have another choice.
Yeah.
I can't go and just be a cog in a machine somewhere.
Yeah.
And
makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I just know that about myself.
Yeah. Well, you found it out earlier than I did.
Yeah.
It's taken me a while to, figure out, hey, what are my passions and what do I want to do with my life? But it's good. It's a good spot. And it does have more of a roller coaster effect, right? Those ups and downs are minimized when you're in, a good paying job and it's steady and you're doing the 9 to 5, and it's, there's not a lot of lows, there's not a lot of highs, but you're not getting the associated adrenaline rush, right, with something really good, right? There's this minimization of your experience to a certain degree, and I think that kind of striking it out on your own and having that entrepreneurial spirit, we're chasing our own destiny, like you were saying, and those highs can be super high and are a lot of fun. The lows can also be
it's not for anybody.
Scary.
I do not recommend anybody like be an entrepreneur, and that's a 180 from like what I used to do. I was like, oh, like everybody should do it and anybody can do it, and you just need to have heart and determination and all that kind of stuff. And now somebody's like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'll actually put them through the ringer a little bit. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Are you like, how passionate are you about this thing that you are pursuing? Because if you don't have a lot of conviction, as soon as the first major uphill battle happens, like, you're gonna like just throw in the towel and go back to something else. And so you've got to be built for it. And if I'm able to dissuade you from doing it when just like a little bit of a heart-to-heart conversation, then you weren't cut out for it in the first place.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you should be fighting for it.
Exactly. Exactly. So walk me through a little bit of like, where do you feel like, I mean, this is kind of just like generally speaking, but like, where do you feel like consulting firms really offer the most value, right? To kind of play a little bit of devil's advocate, right? Especially some of the larger organizations who have potentially, a lot of resources, a lot of people, things like that. That wasn't something that was like very clear to me, say like 10 years ago. I couldn't really wrap my head around exactly where they played. Now, having been exposed to a lot of different firms and just obviously through this, I think I have my own kind of opinions as to where they can play and a lot of value that can be created there. But I'm kind of curious through your experience.
Sure.
What is the value that these firms play?
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's like lawyers. There's always so many lawyer jokes, right? Consultants kind of get a bad rap to a certain degree. In fact, as you were saying that, I remember my grandfather used to say, what is a consultant? He's somebody who will walk in, take your watch off your wrist and tell you what time it is, right? And that's how he viewed consultants. Never used them, right? Ever. And I think it has evolved, right? And people's understanding and where that value can come from has evolved. And I would say there's different types of consulting firms, and there's room for all of them, right? I mean, you've got that heavy, deep strategy, research-based, and here's the cutting-edge framework or methodology. Here, we've done a survey of these 100 companies, and here's the digital disruptors who are doing it the right way. And, you should do this. You should follow these things. And that works. I mean, people need that type of insight, and they need somebody to go and gather that industry perspective and sort of parrot it back to them to a certain degree. I think there's some value there. But the challenge comes when you try to take this perfect strategy and implement it in an imperfect company, right? And imperfect, I mean, it has its own cultural idiosyncrasies, right? Or it has a history of doing things a specific way. Or it has a kind of personality of its people and how people interact. Are they more command and control? Or are they more socialization and consensus driven, right? You have to take that into consideration when you're getting and trying to implement these big strategies. And so that's another place where different kinds of consulting firms can add value, is in the execution piece, right? So you've got the strategy folks, they try to implement it. There's some challenges. How do you go about identifying what are those challenges, and then optimizing them within this newfound transformation that's just happened within the organization? And so I think those are really the two main places that consulting can play, is more of the strategic and then some of the execution. And then, after that, you can certainly get into like business process outsourcing or trying to save costs. I mean, there's tons of ways that consultants get involved there.
Yeah.
But it's really the ability to ramp up and down, to focus on a specific problem where you may have certain constraints, that you can really use services like that.
I think there's a little bit of a stigma sometimes, not with the boutique firms, but with the bigger firms. They come in and sell you digital transformation, then you get locked into the implementation of a unnamed ERP system, and then that takes 2 years. That's never actually finished, and then you're required to like hire a bunch of people. And so like that's been my experience talking with people kind of in the space, is they're just like, oh man, like we're just gonna get straddled with all this like stuff that we don't actually need. And so it seems like there's certain people who've kind of like ruined that for other people, but I know that's not the reality of like all consulting firms.
Right. No. And that's another thing when you asked about what sort of attracted you to more of the boutique style. In all consulting firms, I would say there's a general path, right? Yeah. And it's going to be different for every firm. There's like an analyst, consultant, senior consultant, manager, senior manager, director, partner. The further you get up that chain, the more expectation there is for business development and sales and bigger programs, ERP implementations, and that $100 million thing, right, that somebody's going to buy. That doesn't sit well with me, just personally. And that's more about finding your own passions and like what you're good at and what you like to do. I never want to just be purely business development and sales, right?
Yeah.
I got into consulting because I like rolling up my sleeves and helping people and solving problems. So I never want to be 100% that. You got to do it, right? Yeah, I mean, everybody has to. But once you see in those tier 2 firms, right, is you've got these RFPs, these requests for proposals, right, for these big ERP implementations. And, at those higher levels, you're really pushed to do more of that, right? And sell those giant pods of people with, some onshore and some offshore folks, and, sell the big platforms. And to me, that's a layer abstracted away from actually helping an individual or helping a team, right? And being really effective that way. So it really comes down to, what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? There's value for an ERP implementation for sure, but are you okay selling that kind of thing versus actually getting involved? So I hear what you're saying, and there are a lot of services that come with that big thing. There's value to be had as well, but that's another thing that you can lean on boutique firms for, is what we call project assurance, right? So you buy this big digital transformation thing, this big ERP implementation, let's say, are their resources being leveraged correctly?
Mhm.
Are they full utilization, right? Is the project going in the right direction? Is it hitting its milestones? Are they being effective, right? Project assurance is something where you could bring a third party, unbiased, and just assess.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that could be helpful.
So a lot of firms do a billion different things, right? So
Mhm.
what kind of projects is it that you guys work on?
Yeah. Good question. So we really bucket our work in 4 themes, let's say: strategy, execution, change, and data and analytics. Those are the 4 that you'll see if you go to our website. What does that actually mean? Let me give you an example from sort of an end-to-end work that we've done in mergers and acquisitions. Okay. So we can do, from a strategy perspective, some work with the client on due diligence on who should we go out and purchase given the state of the industry, right? And what we're looking to accomplish. That would be some strategic work we could do. After the purchase, right, you've got all of this IT integration that needs to happen. You're trying to slam 2 companies together. There's some strategy around, how do you go about doing that effectively? What is the governance model? What is the teaming model? How do you put the right people in place pre-day one, right? What does that look like? What's the plan? Strategy stuff. Execution would be, hey, let's do the actual project and program management of this. We do a lot of agility as well. So working in Kanban or Scrum or even scaled agile frameworks, if it's a really big program or portfolio. So that's, I would say, is our bread and butter. In fact, Anaxis's old motto, let's say, is where strategy meets execution. And that's really, I would say, where we play the best. You've got those Bains and the BCGs and the big guys coming in with these strategies. Once they get implemented and executed and we start seeing those challenges, that's kind of the intersection where we play the best. But so doing that project work. Change is all around behavioral change management, which you may be familiar with, right? It's you're trying to implement this big thing. You're affecting a lot of different people, and you're potentially writing over their processes, right? So how do you go about lessening or flattening that adoption curve, right? So that things happen more smoothly. There's a whole practice around change management, and so that's something that we have some experience in. And then data and analytics would be, for us, is more around data strategy and governance and visualizations, right? We were just talking a second ago about Power BI and Tableau and Spotfire, and you've got this portfolio of different projects and programs happening as part of this IT integration. How do we get all the data out of those initiatives and roll it up to a view where decisions can be made by management and leaders can see progress, and using data visualization for that? So when we say data analytics, we don't have data scientists and machine learning engineers, right? We work with those groups, but we do have some of the front end visualization and data engineering pieces.
So let's dive into that while we're on it. What is the status of kind of just data visualization in the industry currently? As we talked about, Spotfire and Power BI, every shop's got at least one of them. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I mean, it's it really depends. Like when I think of analytics, I think of it like a spectrum. Okay, there's the diagnostic stuff and the descriptive stuff, which I would say is traditional analytics with visualizations, right? What's happening, right? What did happen in the past? Those types of things, and that's what dashboarding is typically used for. Then you get into advanced analytics, which is more like the predictive and prescriptive stuff, and that starts getting more into like data science and that kind of thing. So we're really talking about the front end of the spectrum here. I would say that everybody's got it. Spotfire was big in energy, right, for a long time. Tableau's sort of made its way in, but a lot of folks are putting a stake in the ground for the Microsoft 365 suite. Right?
It's easy whenever everybody's already on the
exactly.
suite.
Everyone knows Excel and Word and PowerPoint.
Yep.
Hey, Power BI's right here. Let's use that. And so we're seeing more of a consolidation and a removal of other visualizations. MicroStrategy, I think, was another one, and getting into Power BI. And you're starting to see also a lot of integration with other, let's say, advanced analytic pieces being brought into those visualizations. So we were just talking a minute ago about integrating large language models and generative AI and this chat GPT like stuff into other interfaces. And so I know Microsoft is really pushing that hard with Power BI and getting those types of capabilities plugged in there. Yeah. But it's, people need to be able to visualize things effectively, take data from disparate systems of record and data sources and pull them together for a holistic view of what's happening. And I think visualizations are fitting the bill for that.
So in order to do that, data quality has to be tip top, right?
Absolutely.
If it's garbage in, it's garbage out. So that's my background, coming into the industry is really data management side of upstream. In your experience, how is it today?
How is it today?
Is it still a shit show, or are we at least a little bit better off than we were a decade ago?
Oh gosh, if I'm being blunt, I think it's likely the former rather than the latter. But you've got different tools, right? You've got different tools to be more effective. The problems that we had in the past, I would say, were more focused around silos. Okay, we've got our data over here. We can access it. Maybe let's get a connection, a service connection to it, and get access to it. But how are we going to pull it together with this data to get a holistic view? And the whole concept of data lakes has kind of stopped that from being as much of an issue, because you can take all of these disparate data sources and ingest them into a single lake, right? Like an Azure Data Lake store, right? Mm-hmm. Or the Cloudera Hadoop cluster, right, was the big thing a few years ago. So big data and those types of lakes have sort of solved that problem to a certain degree, because you could put structured, unstructured, semi-structured data in there, and you can find ways to create derived data products from lots of different systems of record.
How would you describe a data lake to somebody who's like, it's a totally new concept to them?
Yeah. So, traditional relational database management systems, or RDBMSs, were you think about structured data, you think about an Excel sheet. Okay, there's like rows and there's columns, and it's very easy to see like where the data is, what column they're in, what is that titled, right? And you've got an entry for every row. That was kind of the traditional way of dealing with data. The problem is when you come with this video, right, or audio clips, right, or seismic data, and you're trying to ingest that's not in a structured format. So how are you going to go about putting that into a centralized location and being able to add attributes or other data pieces to it to come out with something different? That's what a data lake allows you to do. You can literally put any type of data in there, and it will hold it there for you. Now, some people have said that turns it into a data swamp, right? Because then you've just got everything dumped into a big central platform. So you've got to have governance associated with that, and a good folder structure, and how do you go about accessing it?
So is it mashed into essentially a single database, or is it now a collection of all of your separate databases, but you can integrate in between them?
Yeah, it's more like the latter, but it's not necessarily databases, right? In this point, it's not this structured data. You can literally just put any sort of file type in there, right? And that allows you to manipulate it to a certain degree, right? Because you've got it all in a centralized spot. But
what are the most common platforms for that?
So there's like Azure Data Lake Store is the one that I'm most familiar with, right? So again, the Microsoft stack, right? But everybody's got their flavor of it. I mean, the AWSs and the Google Cloud platforms. There were, I would say, and probably still are, companies that are just focused on creating a data lake, but that's been incorporated into larger things now because it's such an integral part.
Isn't that kind of how so Salesforce bought Tableau, but before that they bought MuleSoft, and
Right.
wasn't MuleSoft essentially acting as some sort of data lake?
I'm not sure, honestly.
I think so.
Not as familiar, perhaps.
I think it was aggregating all the different disparate data sources, and then they bought the Tableau to add on the visualization layer
for that front end.
Yeah,
got it. Yeah. And so you're seeing that consolidation, right? And putting it all together. One interesting thing I would say is that there are still challenges with that, which is the time and effort and cost, therefore, associated with taking all of your disparate data sources and ingesting them in the right structure into this lake to make them usable. And so there's something out there called like Trino and Presto, which came about in the Facebook world, right? But has since been it's also been open source. There's an open source project you can access there, but there's companies like Dremio and Starburst that will allow you to put a semantic layer on top, and literally it goes out with SQL queries and will query all of your databases regardless of where they are and bring that in to a single data layer. Right. Mm-hmm. And then that way you don't have to go in and ingest all that data into a lake, spending all that time and effort and cost to do so. You can just access it sort of immediately through this semantic layer. And so, new problems arise as a result of new technology, and then new solutions come into play. Right. And it's just such a constantly evolving space for sure.
Let's talk about evolving spaces.
Right.
Let's talk about AI, ML, all the most cutting edge stuff that we're seeing in the space. Are you seeing applications here in oil and gas, or are we just not ready for the prime time?
Well, I mean, oil and gas is always, at least again, stereotypically, has been considered a laggard in this kind of technology adoption space. I think it is prime time, right? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I didn't mention it when I was talking earlier about our services, but one of the things we've done is gone out and added ecosystem partners where we don't really have the expertise, but we think we found someone who's created a better mousetrap in a certain space. Mm-hmm. One of those connection points you actually had on the podcast here was Ahmed from Hybrid Technologies doing digital twin for midstream storage terminals and oil refineries. So that's one space. We think they have a good technology. E2Log is another one. They're end-to-end logistics platform, creating sort of a control tower for optimizing that logistics pipeline. And then the third one we've got currently is Domino Data Lab, and they do machine learning operations, or MLOps. They have an MLOps platform. And we recently co-wrote a blog with them where we were talking not about their product in particular, but generally for energy, how is it different than other industries, right? And what are the challenges that they have in the machine learning space that an MLOps platform could help address? Again, not talking.
So what does MLOps platform mean?
So MLOps is, you guys, you've likely heard of like DevOps, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's for traditional, let's say, software development, right? You're building a product. You want to combine that dev team with the operations team so that they're one entity, right? So you don't run into the same issues that you've had in the past of development builds something and just throws it over the wall to operations, and they're like, well, I can't do anything with this, or I can't operationalize and scale this, right? It's a challenge. So why don't you smash those teams together and make sure that they're developing in conjunction with each other so that you can have a smooth flow of new product features and functionality over time. So that's really like the DevOps. So in machine learning, you've got a different type of workflow, right, than a traditional software development, but you still need that same connection point of, hey, if we build this new algorithm to solve this problem, it's going to eventually need to get pushed out into a production environment so that our end users can get value from it. We're going to have to monitor that model to make sure the efficacy stays high. And we might have to do some enhancements or some changes in order to retrain the data to make sure that it's still being effective. And so there's this connection point between operations and machine learning development that an MLOps platform can sort of help congeal or make into a single.
What are the use cases that you're seeing that being applied to in oil and gas?
Yeah. So the three sort of main problems that we identified that are specific to the energy industry. The first one is around citizen development. So oil and gas has a higher percentage of engineering talent than other industries, right? I mean, maybe you talk about aerospace and a couple others, but oil and gas is up there, right? Energy is up there. What do those smart engineers like to do? They like to tinker, right? I mean, folks are learning Python now in school and then coming into the workforce where that was not the case 10 years ago. And what are they trying to do? Well, they're trying to make their jobs easier. They're trying to build applications to solve problems in their space. They're trying to use Python in a Jupyter notebook to build some machine learning application and then, roll it out so they and their teams can use it. But they don't have a software engineering background, right? They don't understand how to get something in a production environment. They don't understand, how do I get the right type of compute? Do I need a CPUs? Do I need GPUs? Am I using Ray or Dask or what do I don't know, right? That's not their area of expertise, but they're not going to stop doing that tinkering just because they don't realize that. The problem you get is you end up having these shadow IT organizations or these groups that are sort of running off and doing their own thing. Maybe they go run a POC or a pilot with a small company that allows, right? And then you got all these things cropping up all over the business units, right? And functions. And that's a challenge. There's no standardization. That's where an MLOps platform can really help out. It abstracts away that complexity that those engineers don't understand. So you can have a compute cluster that is dedicated for that type of workload. You can standardize a process for how you get something into production. You can, after getting something in production, genericize it and make it searchable. So, hey, I'm an engineer in the field. I'm looking to build a model for predictive maintenance for one of my compressors. Mm-hmm. Has somebody in my company done that before? Right? I don't know that unless there's some platform where I can go and I can search compressors or predictive maintenance or whatever. Yeah. And it'll search and say, here's an algorithm that you could potentially use. And it probably wouldn't be 100%, right? There's different geologic structures, there's different data, right? But you'd likely be able to start not from scratch, but from 70, 80% there. So I think that citizen development space could be potentially underutilized, as well as draw away from what you're trying to accomplish as an organization. And energy, it's more prominent, I would say, than other industries, just given that engineering talent.
Are you seeing anybody looking at really AI, or particularly even like generative AI? I had a conversation with one of the largest CMPs the other day about, hey, what is your focus from a technology perspective? And they were like, everything AI. And I was like, cool, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
So I'm curious, from your perspective, are you seeing other groups paying attention? Obviously, we're all talking about it. We're all using it personally, whether Absolutely. It's ChatGPT, Bard, Claude, doesn't matter. I use it 10 times a day, minimum.
Yeah.
In the same way that I would Google, back in the day. Not that I don't Google things, I still Google things, but I use AI for more than I query things these days. But I'm curious, are you seeing anybody actually working on anything, or is it I'll just kind of just talk and chatter?
No, I mean, with that talk and chatter comes leadership attention, right? And then they're asking questions. Hey, what are we doing in this space, and where are we, and how do we effectively stand something up? This goes back to one of the challenges we actually outlined in that blog, which is for energy companies in particular, and I'm talking more of like, integrated oil companies, but in general, oil and gas isn't just in one part of the world, right? I mean, you've got Australia, you've got Latin America, you've got the North Sea, you've got Canada, you've got whatever, right? All of these different locations and all of these different business units around the world, let's say, that creates a very federated environment, okay? What you're trying to do with generative AI and like large language models is bring in all of the data to basically create this universe that's then searchable like a chat GPT, right? These billions of points of data, right? It's very hard to do that when you've got all these federated business units. So that's more in energy a problem than other industries as well. So what can you do about that? How do you go about bringing that data together and vectorizing it so that it is usable in an application like that? And that's where an MLOps platform could help you, right? We just talked about data lakes, right? You don't want to go off and try to ingest all of that data. Sometimes you can't. There's export compliance issues of pulling data out of certain regions. It has to stay where it is. There's data sovereignty, right? How do you get around those roadmaps? Well, a good platform should be able to go into multiple clouds. It should be able to go on-prem. It should be able to go to where data rests and doesn't actually migrate it, right? But is able to leverage it, vectorize it, and pull it together so that you can build these large language models and start getting your company the ability to do those sorts of things. Another thing I've heard in that space is, hey, let's use the Open AI suite, right? When Microsoft had the big purchase there. Let's do that now. Let's prove some things out. But hey, if we've got that engineering talent, or if we've got the technical capabilities of doing so, and we know that this is a valuable use case, let's go to the open source project and let's see if we can't do it ourselves, right? And build that out. And so I think your companies are thinking through that, right? Do I use that Microsoft suite, Open AI, Copilot things that are coming down the pike, or do I open source this and try to build my own thing? Build versus buy is always
I just think, oh man, just seeing. It's a little bit different now because so when OpenAI released the GPT-4 model, there was a window of about 2 weeks where it was absolutely brilliant. And they've run into a little bit of snags just because there's too much demand, not enough supply of compute power. And so they've dialed that model back significantly. And I know that because I log my most successful queries for certain things that I do, or prompts for things that I do. And I've gone back since and tried to prompt the same thing, and the answers are just degraded significantly, right? And they've also removed web browsing from there, a lot of other things, right? Despite being a pro user, all of that's gone, right? The model's not as smart as it was. So now I've switched over to Claude. I say all that to say, during that window of 2 weeks, I prompted it with some very, very advanced prompts, right? Just building upon prompt after prompt after prompt to really give it all the information I needed to really run some more complex calculations and scenarios on certain things, right? And so seeing the power of that, I could imagine that an oil and gas company could apply that to the financial planning and modeling aspect of what they do, to be able to find any risk, in the business, of being able to look at price decks and saying, hey, if oils remain flat, gas remain flat, if we were to see a massive dip, massive spike, take into consideration hedging, a billion different factors, and being able to spit out something that you were like, that could probably do it much better than a human could, right? And so I see a lot of opportunity there, and I'm kind of curious who's going to be the first one to really crack that nut.
Right. Yeah, and you're describing your prompts. I mean, there's an art to that too.
Oh yeah.
Right. This whole new job function of being a prompt engineer and being able to query those models in the right way to get back what you need. But you're right, on the back end, you've got to have the right data types. You've got to have it modeled the right way for it to be effective with your prompts, right? And that's really the challenge any company's having now. I mean, what we're using is the cutting edge stuff, right? And you're right, there's going to be more niche products that are going to get more into FinOps and the finance side of house, and you're going to see that in production reporting, let's say, or you're going to see it in downstream chemicals. And I mean, there's going to be these niche groups that pop up that are really focused on a specific problem, right? Rather than being so general. So yeah, very interesting space.
I'm curious to see how it all plays out, man.
Same.
Dude, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed this. Enjoyed getting to know you over the past few months. And so excited for you guys. What's the website if anybody wants to reach out?
Yeah, sure. So it's activeraconsulting.com.
Okay.
Super easy.
And you're on LinkedIn, right?
We're on LinkedIn. Yeah. And it is really a we, right? I haven't mentioned this, but I did say it was some of the Naxos folks that came together, but we've got a group of 7 founders, excuse me. And so, we're sort of kicking off this 2.0 version of Naxos, and we're really having a great time. We started with those 7, I believe we're up to 13 now.
Oh, wow.
So even just since April, we've already doubled, and we've got some good client work coming down the pike, and it's been a lot of fun. It's that entrepreneurial spirit. I feel like it's kind of rounding out, my career goals, where I've got, I've seen the big consulting firm, I've seen the boutique firm, and now I'm sort of founding, right? So I've kind of got all these different perspectives now, and it's super fun. We're having a good time doing it, and happy to work with folks that are having challenges. I mean, that's what a good consultant does, right?
I love it, man. Yeah, reach out to these guys if you have any issues you're looking to deal with. Tommy's just a great guy to talk with anyways. If you guys like the episode, take 2 seconds, share with your friends, all your colleagues, send it to your mom, your grandma. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.